Thank you very much for joining us. I'm with Alice Stroud here from Born Free USA. Alice is the Director of Global Conservation at Born Free USA. She's joining us from France today, and thank you for watching our video. You know the drill. Please just like and subscribe down there. It helps us to rank better with YouTube, and it helps us to get more people to be able to see these conversations. So thank you very much for joining us, Alice.
Oh, hi, Adriaan. Thank you for having me over. It's exciting to talk about our work.
Thank you very much. I think talking about your work, I think a good place to start is maybe for you to just tell us a little bit about Born Free USA, how it started, and what type of work you focus on globally.
So yes, our organization was as an exciting start story. It was two actors, Virginia McKenna and Bill Travers, who starred in the classic wildlife movie Born Free. And this film told the true story of conservationist John and George Adamson, who rescued a lioness cub, Elsa, and she was successfully returned to the wild. And so from there, they recorded many, many wildlife films, including a wildlife film called An Elephant Called Slowly, with an elephant calf called Polly. And at the end of the movie, they were trying to release this elephant calf into the wild, but unfortunately was gifted to a zoo, which was really heartbreaking for these two actors, especially because the zoo died in captivity. And so from there, they were inspired about launching this organization to make sure that you could keep wildlife in the wild, and they would devote their life to wildlife conservation. So that's where the organization was from. And our programs really are focusing on tackling the biodiversity crisis, and we run wildlife conservation programs in West Africa specifically, where we are trying to be impact driven. We're trying to focus on what is having the biggest impact for conservation, including wildlife crime especially. So I run the program focused on wildlife crime in West Africa.
Okay, great. And I think your involvement is on the West African strategy, specifically on combating wildlife crime. Is that correct?
Yes, this has been quite an exciting process, actually. We started this work about 6 years ago, and when we started the work, we didn't really understand the wildlife crime threat in West Africa. So the work started by listening to the countries, where we led some wildlife crime threat assessment missions. We provided expertise to the national authorities in understanding wildlife crime better and understanding really how to coordinate in the wildlife law enforcement response. So after all of these wildlife threat assessment missions were completed, we combined regional recommendations and supported countries in formulating a joint response to wildlife crime, which ultimately became this wildlife crime strategy, the regional strategy. And what's very exciting about that is that it defines a regional response to wildlife crime, because as you know, it's a transboundary crime. So you need to have all of the countries coordinate together to tackle wildlife crime efficiently, which is, we developed the West Africa Wildlife Crime Strategy alongside with the countries, and it was just adopted in December 2023, just last December. And that's very exciting because that means that the region now has the tool that they need to coordinate on wildlife law enforcement.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I think, like you say, I mean, it's really is like a cross-border, internationally connected crime, you know. So we've just recently had an issue in South Africa where a person has just been arrested. I think he's received a 6-month sentence, and it was specifically for wildlife crimes and for the exotic pet trade. So also there was international involvement from the US Department of Forestry and Fisheries and the Environment. And one of the big things that came out of that one was that a Maxian pit viper, a critically endangered snake, which there are only 500 left in the wild in China, was seized at this person's house. And people were planning to keep these wild animals as pets in their houses and just to show their friends and etc. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the things you deal with, some of the things we spoke about earlier, are not small and isolated like this with where you're just dealing with 5 or 6 snakes. These things are big things. You're talking about forests, you're talking about wood crimes, you're talking about training the investigators to be able to detect these crimes better, and to be able to take individuals like this and ultimately bring them to justice. So maybe tell me a little bit more about these investigative trainings and things that you are working with the International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, INL, together with USA to deliver these trainings to help to prosecute these wildlife criminals, if I could call them that.
Yes, no, thank you. So I think it's very important to keep in mind that wildlife crime is a very, very organized crime, and it does international wildlife crime networks that are highly organized, and it's the same type of networks that traffic in weapons, traffic in human beings, traffic in drugs. And so as a consequence, you have to have support for countries to build a similar type of response, because wildlife crime has significant security implications for countries. And so in the context of the work that we do, we intervene at 2 levels. At the national level, we support countries with setting up task forces. What task forces are is the setup that allows all of the various authorities having a role to play in the wildlife law enforcement chain to coordinate. So you would have the police and the customs and the wildlife officers and the judges and prosecutors together and brainstorm about priority measures to tackle wildlife crime together so that they can be effective. And they would share intelligence, as close to real time as possible. And they would kind of make sure that from the time that you intercept the crime, you are all of the skills that you need to make sure it results in prosecution and arrest. And at the regional level, like I was explaining earlier, because it's a transboundary crime, highly organized, you're supporting countries in coordinating with one another. And so at the regional level, the West Africa strategy that was adopted in December is set providing for a wildlife law enforcement network that will be a regional network through which the various countries will coordinate and exchange intelligence and develop joint investigations. And so we're supporting the countries at the national level and at the regional level. And really kind of the content of the trainings that we organize are really, really impact focused, and they're really depending on the country. We always follow this needs assessment approach where you have to listen to the countries about their priority needs and where they're at in their law enforcement skills, and then develop your training programs based on that. And so in West Africa, our trainings are focused on basic investigations techniques, sharing of intelligence, trying to ensure, for example, that you process the crime scene properly. And then we just developed a human intelligence training where you're supporting the authorities develop kind of an intelligence network to make sure that they're supported with collecting the intelligence that they need to lead to arrest and prosecutions and the likes.
Okay. So we spoke a little bit earlier about the and I think what I'm hearing from what you're talking about, there's a lot of interconnectedness in wildlife crimes. You're talking about governmental across boundaries. And you also alluded a little bit to things in the communities that these wildlife crimes happen. Now, being from South Africa myself, who's at the forefront probably of the rhino crisis worldwide, we are very well aware of the involvement of communities and the involvement of people in communities to be part of the crime, firstly, I think, and secondly, to combat these crimes and to create education among communities to understand the impact of these crimes. What sort of, what do you see, where do you see that fit into the process of the training of these investigators? Where does the community work and all of that fit into the broader strategy?
Yeah, so I think it's very important to take communities into account, and it's very important to ensure that they're an ally to authorities in this combat. So I think you have to act at multiple levels. A significant role that they have to play is ensuring that they are supported in their livelihoods. I think when we tackle our wildlife law enforcement work, we ensure that at the same time as we tackle wildlife crime, we ensure that the communities that kind of could find it appealing to partake in this crime understand that it's very damaging to their livelihoods, then it can wipe out an entire range of species on which their livelihood depends, whether it be for food supplies or clean air, clean water, all of that. So the first step really is outreach on ensuring that they understand how wildlife crime will impact or is impacting already their livelihood. And the other key aspect, of course, is trying to support the development of alternative livelihoods in situations where communities don't necessarily have other choices and partaking into some of the problem. And at Born Free USA, we do have outreach programs to local communities, and it's really kind of understanding what is most impactful by listening to the authorities and seeing how to support them. And the form that it takes really varies depending on the countries. In some countries, for example, in Benin, we're supporting the authorities set up a little bit of a museum for the youth, trying to help them understand what species are targeted by wildlife crime, why they are important in their ecosystems and the like. In Ivory Coast, we've supported the authorities in launching an outreach that were towards the craftsmanships and the hunters and things like that. And in Nigeria, we supported with outreach, the authorities with outreach on the communities that were surrounding protected areas that were really kind of more affected by poaching and the like. So it's really, you base your approach on the community, on the country. And I think it's very, very vital to ensure that you can train kind of authorities in having this harmonious relationship with communities and ensuring that they can contribute to the wildlife law enforcement response through human intelligence and sharing information, building these partnerships in a natural way.
What have you found are the biggest challenges in implementing this program up until this point? If you could put a shout out to people assisting, I'm sure one of the main things is funding. Born Free USA is a donor-funded organization, so I'll put a link down below, guys, if you want to donate to Born Free USA. There'll be a link at the bottom. I'm sure donation is very important, but what other challenges do you have in implementing these type of strategies?
Yes, I think what's very challenging is that you need to tackle wildlife crime along the enforcement chain. So you need to go from source countries to transit countries to destination countries. And what's been challenging has been kind of building that bridge between the destination countries and the source countries, where you don't necessarily have a similar level of urgency, especially if you're a destination country, a demand country. You're part of the problem in that you're creating this market and bringing all of these specimens in, and you need to have full cooperation between the destination countries, transit countries, and source countries in order to be successful. And it's been sometimes quite challenging to try to kind of build that bridge between the countries that we work with and the destination countries, where some of the demand countries are not feeling the urgency necessarily to stop or recognize their role in the problem. And it's something which we really try to tackle through our advocacy work, where we try to kind of make people understand that the need to stop extinctions is a shared problem. It's not just affecting the countries that are biodiversity rich, it's affecting everyone. And having the level of ambition be shared everywhere by everyone in the need to stopping extinctions now, where an extinction crisis means you have 1 million species about to go extinct, many within decades. So there is a sense of urgency that's not shared along the spectrum for everyone, which is quite an uphill battle to tackle, I would say.
Well, it's something that's just come to mind, and so something that on this issue that you're mentioning, is it maybe not the way globally we measure conservation? countries are measured about how they protect, on how they protect their own wildlife. So South Africa would be measured on the global stage on how we protect our rhinos or our elephants. But countries, those destination countries, aren't really measured on how they protect other countries' wildlife, so they could, for example, try and build a beautiful record on how they look after their specific wild animal or specific biodiverse section of their country, but not always get the same international pressure from fixing that. Do you think that is something that is a problem?
Yes, no, definitely. I mean, we don't live in a bubble, and so I think that sometimes it's very difficult, especially when you think of, very developed countries like the US. It's very difficult for people to feel that, having deforestation in West Africa is a problem for someone that's living somewhere in the US. But if we lose a significant number of species, if you have a significant number of trees that are cut down, it's affecting livelihoods everywhere, with in that it's deteriorating all of and contributing to climate change, contributing to major weather events and all of that. And so I think that the need to ensure that there is a global responsibility and that everybody is acting with the same level of ambition is very crucial. And it's certainly what we're strive to do on our advocacy side, because Born for USA is an organization that just acts on two fronts. There is the advocacy side, where we try to contribute to decision making at the international level, and then of course the field side, which is what we've discussed today. But I think it's very, very important to understand that we should all kind of be in it together with the same level of ambition and the same level of urgency.
Fantastic. So just coming back to the training itself, can you maybe just, to close off the interview, maybe just tell us what is the future of the training? What are your next trainings that you are planning? And just maybe tell the listeners what are your plans for the training, and how many more trainings do you have rolling out around West Africa?
So we have a series of trainings planned, because we're elaborating, we're kind of progressively developing the investigative skills and the intelligence skills of our task forces. So we have a series of trainings plans, but I think it's important to try to. We don't want to be needed at the end of the day. So the future of our training program is that we're having this train the trainer approach, when now we have trained multiple trainers, and we're hoping that we can find funds to let them continue expanding the training on their own. And that's really the ideal approach. Our trainings are very practical, they're country-based, they're kind of tailored to the needs of this particular country, but we give countries the resources that they need, technical resources and skills that they need to have their own trainers to reproduce the training. So my vision for the program is to be able to find a sustainable source of funds so that these countries can continue expanding the trainings, continue expanding the skill level that they've acquired through our trainings. And we're doing a lot of mentoring now, which I guess is very, very rewarding from our perspective. You're really training people to the point where you give them the skills that they need to lead successful investigation that lead to prosecution and dismantling the networks. And so we are now doing a lot of mentoring. It's been very, very successful. We've seen some countries make significant, kind of seizures and arrest, and we have running investigations. There is a West Africa mentoring panel that has been set up that we're contributing to. And that's really the best case scenario, is that you would have countries reciprocate the training on their own, and then we continue the mentoring, and eventually the support would no longer be necessary. That's the best case scenario from our perspective, is that it's really kind of giving countries the momentum to do that for themselves.
Oh, fantastic. It'd be great at some point in the future to be hearing some of these stories to be hearing some of these successes and some of these arrests and some of these networks, and I almost want to say some of these loopholes and gaps that we've closed in the international wildlife trade and wildlife crime trade. So Alice, I'd like to really thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for coming to, and I think thank you very much for your hard work of what you do out there every day. Many of us want to make a difference. We want to try and contribute something to the environmental or our environmental future, or to wildlife, but we're not always in a place or have the opportunity to do so. Thank you very much for your service and for continuing the work, and thank you very much for joining me today and telling us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, thank you. I think you have a very important role to play in kind of the outreach yourself, in terms of trying to ensure that people have access to this information. So thank you for your interest in our work, and it was good to talk to you.
Thanks a lot. And you guys, you know what to do. Please like and subscribe at the bottom there, and we'll see you at the next interview.